Hi, this is Scott Sustacek, your host for CEO to CEO, the podcast from the CEO Roundtable. CEO Roundtable is a peer-to-peer organization that brings business leaders together to share wisdom, experience, and insights from the trenches. Today's episode is sponsored by IntroWorks, launching powerful B2B brands for more than 30 years. Learn more about them at intro.works. In this episode of CEO to CEO, I've got special guest John Martin. John, welcome.
Thank you.
John is chairman of FlutterBee Education Group. And today we're going to be talking about driving growth through recapitalization, which is an intriguing topic. And, John, before we get too deep into that, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about FlutterBee Education.
Well, they call publishing, I've heard it called the accidental profession, and that pretty much describes how I got into it. I had a dream to be in technology, particularly in the Apple world. But after some setbacks during a really tough job market in the early 90s, I landed in a publishing job, and it was a startup. And I learned to love book development and the education market. And from there, I just was love at first sight, and I stayed with it my entire career, moved to a distributor, then to a company called Capstone Press in Mankato. And
I've heard of it.
Yeah, worked there twice. But most of the time, it's been involved with startups and turnarounds, companies that either were struggling or starting out. And that's really what I've loved to do. I love the kind of the do or die, must make this happen sort of situation. And I've kind of found myself in those opportunities regularly.
And so at some point, though, you decided to hang your own shingle out and say, okay, I'm going to be in business.
Yeah, it was, I kind of ran the gamut. With these startups, you're involved in picking, packing, shipping. You're also involved in product development. You're involved in sales. I worked on the publishing side. I also worked on the distribution side, where I saw, the whole universe of what sold to the education market. And that really kind of prepared me really well to jump out on my own and start a company, because I kind of knew every position, not perfectly, but well enough to make a go of it.
Well, and so how long ago did you start FlutterBee? And it didn't start with that name, right?
No,
market under a different.
Yeah, I'll tell you, kind of, it's this will all make sense as we go through it. But I started with a company called Bellwether Media, and Bellwether was the first company. It was started in 2005. The goal there was to go an inch wide and a mile deep in early education for schools and libraries. And our first brand, Blastoff, really hit the mark and became one of the fastest growing early literacy products in the library market. From there, we started another company focused on kind of super early level books that were tied to a reading program called Accelerated Reader. Had a company called Jump. And rather than doing it at Bellwether, I actually started a new business, and with separate people working in it and separate management. And I stayed at Bellwether and started, got it going, got Jump going, but then hired the people to run it. After that, a couple of years later, we acquired a company out of New York called Bearport Publishing. Bearport, similar to us, sold into the same market. And it wasn't too long after that I got an itch to start Kaleidoscope Publishing. So I had four small businesses, Bellwether being the biggest, roughly twice as big as Jump, which was the second biggest, and then Bearport and Kaleidoscope were smaller. Again, back to my startup roots, I liked the small companies. I struggled with the administrative aspects of a larger business, and so my response to that was to start another company and keep them all small.
Of course. So this episode is about driving growth through recapitalization. Yep. And so you brought in an equity partner, correct?
I did.
In this, yeah.
Yeah, we brought in Lineage Capital out of Boston as my partner, and I'm really glad I picked them. But, for us, it was growth. And like I said in the beginning, I've been part of startups, and I'm pretty good at running small businesses, starting and running them. But unfortunately, the company isn't that small anymore. I guess I should say fortunately. It's not that small anymore. And so I thought, I need help. I really need help in getting this company to a bigger place. And there were some inefficiencies of running four small businesses. And I wasn't quite sure how to get there myself, and so I thought I need a partner that's been there, done that, and knows how to put these companies together and make them stronger as a single unit versus individual businesses.
Was that a hard decision? Because when as you think about you're the sole equity owner of the company, and then you got to think about, well, I have to let someone else share in this and share in the decision making. And before I own 100%, it's all me, but it's also all your risk too.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that enter into the decision to divest some equity, and one of the biggest, I guess there were several things, but one of the biggest was talking to my advisors of the amount of when you start to do estate planning, you realize that there could be real issues if something were to happen to you and or your significant other with your kids. We could either buy very expensive insurance, or we could divest in some of the business to set us up so that if something were to happen, taxes and everything else would be covered. We didn't have any debt. We had zero debt. So at the business, in about month 7, we were very fortunate to sign an agreement where we just didn't need debt. And so the idea for me was to get chips off the table, to secure the financial well-being for my family, and also to get some help, some advisors to really help us to get this business to the next level.
So as part of this, you certainly saw that there was opportunity for faster growth with the business.
Absolutely.
And so then once you made the decision, I think I want to explore this, how did you go about it? How did you go about, finding the right partner?
Yeah, so what we did, recapitalization could take many forms. We could have gone to the bank and just said, hey, we want money, and I could have taken that money and put it in my pocket, and like you'd refinance your house.
Sure.
No debt. You take the money and run. But I wanted more than just the money. I wanted help. I wanted help with helping to grow the business and helping to organize the business in a way that allowed it to scale. My businesses, they were getting to a certain size, and then it was more difficult to grow them. And the power of pulling all these businesses together, it's been a year and 3 months, and we can already see the dividends from the benefits of having 4 companies working together to take market share versus them doing it separately. So I went to a friend and a CEO roundtable sponsor. I went to Madeira Partners, and they ran a competitive process for us, and we ended up with more than a dozen offers that we could consider. We met with about 10 of those, and we narrowed it down to the one that I thought fit us. Since I was going to stay in the business, I wanted to make sure there was a fit in personality. I wanted to work with people I enjoyed. I looked back at my career and thought my favorite jobs weren't necessarily what I was doing, it was who I was working with. And so that was super important to me. I didn't take the highest offer. I picked the offer that had the people that I really enjoyed and thought I could work well with.
Well, Madeira is an excellent firm, so I think you chose very well there. How long did that process take you as you went through it?
It took a little bit longer for us, and we did a sell-side quality of earnings, and it was my first time through a quality of earnings, and not a lot of fun, in my opinion, for someone who's kind of a creative and likes to doesn't like to spend a lot of time with spreadsheets. It took us about a year total. The first 4 months was the seller side quality of earnings, and then the process took us about 3 months, and then it took about 6 months more, so a little more than a year for the entire process to play out.
So very planful, and obviously you used your time well to vet. So you brought in Lineage. It's been about a year, and how have you turned that into a growth story for FlutterBee? How are you seeing that play out in the marketplace, within the company? You're in even your role, because you moved from CEO to chairman too, right?
Yeah, I'm out of the nitty-gritty work. I'm loving that, and I get to spend more time, meeting with the executives and strategic planning, and I get a fair amount of time for my family. So it's very nice. Even prior to the transaction, they want you to give them a vision for what the company can be. They're looking to you to say, how do we double this company in 5 years? And so we go through exercises. We went through exercises with Lineage even before the transaction was complete, kind of painting a picture for what it might look like after the transaction. And so we created many initiatives, mostly go-to-market strategy based, but also across the board. We wanted to integrate all of our systems. We changed out our ERP. We consolidated human resources and finance and customer service. And there's so much happens in the first year. And the one great thing about private equity is they're constantly reminding you to work on the business, not just in the business. So you're always focused on building the business and growing it and making decisions to enhance EBITDA, which is what all the private equity folks care about.
Right.
And so that's the sole focus is how do we keep growing this. And when you're working in your business day to day, you sometimes too much in the trenches, and you forget that this business could be a much bigger business if we were to spend our time in the right places. And they're doing that every day.
Do you find yourself, because of that change and bringing that attitude about working on the business, do you find yourself where before driving home you might have been thinking about how do I solve today's problem around getting a book finished or across the finish line? Do you find yourself now thinking about, okay, how do I find that next market? How do I find that next big product?
Yeah. It's a balancing act because we had an integration on top of wanting to start new initiatives and new product lines and discover new markets. And so we had to do both. And so we're now integrated to the point where we can focus full time on kind of the revenue expansion activities. And private equities also helps you do is to take risk. You've got a partner in it now. It's not all your money. I still have a 50.9 stake, and I've got two other partners that comprise the other 9.1. It's a lot easier, I think, when you've had a sounding board to talk to and consult with, and thorough and researched and tested to go forward with these initiatives when you just have someone who they're advising you and helping you along the way. I didn't take big risks before the recap. I tended to be pretty conservative. We grew every year except for COVID in 2008, but it wasn't much. Just high single to lower double-digit growth. And when you start to work with private equity, 20% is a minimum. We really want to see a big growth. So we're making much bigger bets, and it's actually a blast.
Well, it's fun to hear that it's working out that way, and it's clear from your comments here that you're enjoying it, and so right decision for you, right decision for the business. If I'm an owner sitting out there and listening to this podcast, and I say, okay, gosh, I have a lot of similarities to John, where John was, what would you advise that owner to think about or to contemplate if they were to, if they're thinking about, okay, I want to follow this path and recapitalize, and I want to bring in a equity partner that can give me the same life that John's living right now.
Yeah. So I guess every situation is unique, but you really have to think about your motivations for why you want to recapitalize. You could do it for growth. You could do it to restructure. You could do it to get out a partner who doesn't quite fit the future. There are a lot of reasons to do it, but as we kind of mentioned earlier, mine were I didn't think I had the skills to get it to the next level. Mm-hmm. I thought I needed help to do it. I didn't think I could do it alone. I didn't want to necessarily take all of that risk. But if you're the type of person that kind of takes a lot of your identity is part of your business, it's a big adjustment. I mean, I didn't think that I was going to have a problem with that, but it is a little bit odd when the day-to-day decisions are no longer made by you. And going into that, you got to have your eyes wide open and think about what will this be like if someone's making a decision that I don't agree with. And I technically have majority ownership and can veto whatever, but once you make that decision, it's vetoing. It means you might have to come back and run the business.
So you use the veto
sparingly
and wisely, right?
Yeah. I love the business, but it definitely takes a different skill set, I think, to grow from a small to mid-sized company. Yeah, that's why I did this.
Yeah. Clearly, there's a lot of things to contemplate in this situation. And I think a lot of owners, and I've heard you say it here a couple of times already, but you've made the comment, I needed help, and you knew that. A lot of owners can't get there. And I've seen that in companies. And just they feel just this sense of responsibility that they've got to solve it all themselves, and because it's their business, their capital, what have you, or they just don't have the wherewithal to get to the point of saying, "Gosh, I can say it. I need help. I think there's growth here. I think we can grow faster, but I might not necessarily be the right person to take that forward." And that can be a big step.
It is a big step. I did kind of define myself a lot by work in my early years, and kind of realized early on that you need to have two lives, one at home and one at work. This step for me was kind of a bit of a compromise, because I still felt like I wanted to be, have a foot in the door and still have my opinions heard, but I didn't necessarily want to make the day-to-day decisions and have the day-to-day stresses of making sure the books arrive on time.
Right.
Whatever you have for that day. But what I like about where I'm at right now is I can still have input, and I can still have all the information at my fingertips for how the business is doing. But I also have another really big opportunity in the future. Private equity doesn't hold forever.
Right.
It's typically a 5 to 7 year hold for this company, and so there will be another day where I get another chance to take another bite of the apple, and so it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's also kind of cool to be like Tom Sawyer, having your friends paint the fence while you go fishing.
Well, and I think there's, based on the kind of growth you're driving toward now, I mean, your second bite could potentially be larger than your first.
They predict that, and that's the plan, is to maximize the potential of the business.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it otherwise. I really love the business and want to see it do well. I don't want to see it go away, and so we surely hope that it will be a big event.
Well, I want to switch gears a little bit now and just talk about your roundtable experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you could share with our listeners, the biggest decision your roundtable helped you with.
I think the decision to entertain private equity and a recap, it was a big decision. I wasn't quite sure what it meant, but I talked to them regularly about that, and it wasn't a quick decision.
Nor should it be, right?
Yeah. It was my number 4 at least 4 times. So
they're like, "Hey, we should talk about this."
Yeah,
right?
And then I think the guys were like, "Well, John, you got to make a decision. We're not going to do it again." I decided to go. It took a long time. We talked about it for a long time, but without them, kind of being able to share my feelings, which a lot of it is feelings, a lot of it's emotions. It's not even business decisions. They were amazing and helped me kind of sort through that and separate kind of fears and from realities and that sort of thing. I'd say the decision to go, which is the hardest one. The rest has been pretty straightforward after you decide to go.
Well, I think big decisions like that, your roundtable can help you kind of get out of your own head, right? Because you can think yourself into darker spots than what are probably reality, right? And how long have you been in the roundtable?
I think it's about a total of 16 years.
Oh, a long time.
Yeah, I've been going for a long time. I think it's been about, I want to say 13 here, and then 3 when I was with Capstone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I have 3 final questions now that will help our listeners get a little better feel of who you are. Favorite movie?
Okay. It's not really too intellectual, but I'd have to go with Iron Man.
Oh, yeah.
I just...
How can you not? It's such good entertainment, right?
I love the character of Tony Stark. And there is some, it's a good film in that you see this kind of guy get transformed from a selfish billionaire to kind of a selfless hero. it's a nice, and I loved, I was kind of a reluctant reader, loved comic books and DC and Marvel growing up. So I love that movie, and I continue to watch it. I own the DVD, but it's everywhere now, so it doesn't matter.
So what are you reading right now?
So I am reading Rocket Fuel. We implemented Gino Wickman, probably 10 years ago, and it's done great things for the business. Now that I'm chairman, I really, I was the visionary before, but I'm reading it.
But you played the integrator too, then, right?
I did. I played both, but
Yeah.
I wanted to read Rocket Fuel to see where I should be spending my time. And Erez Pakar, who's our CEO, has been doing a great job, and he and I work really well together. But sometimes I forget my role, and he reminds me very politely. And I'm hoping Rocket Fuel can help me to stay in my lane a little better.
Well, and I think that the fact that you have that relationship already, where you can kind of remind each other, "Hey, this is my role," or "This is,"
it's really great.
And so, final fun question is, what's your bucket list concert?
Okay, so this would take a reunion to happen, but it would be REM. REM has been a huge part of my life. I started listening to them in high school, and I remember them in concert at the St. Paul State's Stadium. It was many, many moons ago, but that day had a blast. It was a nice concert. It was a warm summer day, and it was out on the field. And just as they were wrapping up with their encore song, "It's the End of the World as We Know It," thunder and lightning broke out across the sky, and it started downpouring rain as they were playing "It's the End of the World as We Know It," and it was just
Couldn't script that, right?
You couldn't. I couldn't believe it because it was not safe, but it was epic. And just looking back to that, I'd love to relive another concert with REM.
Wow. Well, John, there's so much more to this topic we could cover. But what I am striking to me is how much you're enjoying this ride right now that you're on. Having made that decision, having brought in Lineage, having brought in a CEO, you've put the business on a new trajectory, and it's fun to see the joy you're getting out of it. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with everybody.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening to the CEO to CEO podcast, produced by Dave Swerdlick and the incredible team at Uptown Podcast Studios. You can find them at uptownpodcast.com. Be certain to subscribe so you don't miss an episode with more CEO wisdom, highlighting experience and insights from the trenches. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review and share with others. If you are a Minnesota-based business leader who would like to learn more about being part of a peer advisory roundtable, check us out at ceo-roundtable.org.